Part 1. Hook Mysterious Beginning. 17 fire lookouts have quit this tower in the last 3 years. I found out why on my 9th night. My name is Ethan Crawford, and 6 months ago, my life fell apart in a Denver apartment that smelled like takeout containers and regret. The divorce papers came on a Tuesday. Sarah didn't even show up to sign them in person. Her lawyer handed me a pen, and just like that, 7 years dissolved into a stack of legal documents that divided our furniture, our savings, and apparently our entire future. I was 29 years old, working as an IT consultant for a company that laid me off 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. Depression hit like a freight train. I stopped returning calls from friends, stopped going to the gym, stopped doing much of anything except staring at my laptop screen and watching my bank account dwindle. My lease was ending in May, and I had nowhere to go. No job, no wife, no plan. That's when I saw the posting on a Forest Service contractor website at 2 in the morning. Fire lookout position, Shoshone National Forest, Wyoming, June through September. $4,200 per month plus housing. Remote location. Solitude required. Apply immediately. I applied before I could talk myself out of it. 3 days later, I had a video interview with a tired-looking woman named Bate who worked for the Forest Service regional office. She asked basic questions about my physical health, whether I could handle isolation, if I had any experience with radio equipment. I lied about the radio part. She seemed oddly eager to hire me, like she was checking boxes on a form rather than actually evaluating my qualifications. "When can you start?" she asked. "Next week," I said. I had nothing keeping me in Denver. "Good, we'll email the details. Pack for 4 months. There's no cell service, limited radio contact, and supply drops every 2 weeks. You comfortable with that?" I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why they needed someone so urgently, why the pay was so high for what seemed like a simple job. But I was desperate for an escape from my collapsing life. Desperate for something that would force me to stop thinking about Sarah, about my failures, about the wreckage of everything I'd built. "I'm comfortable with it," I told her. 1 week later, I loaded everything I owned into my Subaru and pointed it north. The drive from Denver to Shoshone National Forest took 8 hours. The first 5 were easy, highways and rest stops, and the gradual shift from Colorado's Front Range to Wyoming's high plains. The landscape opened up, all sagebrush and distant mountains and sky that went on forever. I stopped for lunch in Casper, filled up the tank, bought supplies I probably didn't need. The last 70 miles were different. The highway shrank to a 2-lane road, then to a single-lane Forest Service route that wound through pine trees and past meadows where elk grazed in the late afternoon sun. My GPS lost signal about 50 miles out. I was navigating with printed directions Bate had emailed me, landmarks instead of street names. Turn left at the creek crossing. Continue 12 miles past the rockslide marker. Tower 12 access road is on the right, marked with a red post. I passed through a town called Kirby around 5 in the evening. Population 340 according to the sign. 1 gas station, 1 general store, a post office that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. I stopped to fill up one more time, knowing it would be my last chance. The attendant was a guy in his 60s, weathered face and suspicious eyes. He watched me pump gas, then said, "Where you headed?" "Fire lookout," I said, "Tower 12. He went very still. "Tower 12, you're going to Tower 12. "Yeah, just hired, starting today." He looked at me like I'd announced I was walking into a burning building. "How long they say you gotta stay?" "Through September." He shook his head slowly, turned away, went back inside without another word. I went into the general store to grab some extra batteries and snacks. The woman behind the counter, maybe 50 years old with graying hair, rang up my items in silence. As I was leaving, she said quietly, "Don't stay past September. Don't ever stay past September." I stopped. "What happens in September?" She just shook her head. Just don't. Small town superstition, I told myself. Rural communities always had their stories, their legends, their warnings about the woods and the mountains. I'd grown up in suburbs and cities. I didn't put stock in ghost stories. The final 32 miles from Kirby to the tower were on a dirt Forest Service road that climbed steadily into the mountains. No cell service, no other cars, just trees and shadows and the sound of gravel crunching under my tires. The sun was getting low, turning everything golden and red, beautiful in a lonely kind of way. I almost missed the turnoff. The red post was faded, barely visible against the tree line. I turned right onto a road that was more like a suggestion of a road, 2 ruts through the grass. Drove another 3 miles, climbing higher. And then I saw it. Tower 12 stood in a clearing surrounded by pine forest. 80 feet tall, steel construction, painted Forest Service brown with a small cabin at the top. There was a narrow staircase spiraling up the exterior, and from this distance, the cabin's windows caught the last light of the day, glowing like eyes. There was a truck parked at the base. Someone was loading boxes into it frantically. I pulled up next to the truck and got out. A man was carrying a duffel bag down the tower stairs, moving fast, almost running. He was maybe 45, Hispanic with dark circles under his eyes and a haunted expression that made the gas station attendant's reaction seem tame by comparison. "You Ethan?" he asked. "Yeah, you must be Ray." Ray Martinez, the outgoing lookout. According to the paperwork, he'd been here since early June. It was now June 21st, 3 weeks. "I'm leaving," Ray said, shoving the duffel into his truck. "I was supposed to stay till you got here, do a proper handoff, but I can't. I can't stay another night." "What's wrong?" He didn't answer, just went back up the stairs for another load. I followed him up. The climb was dizzying, 80 feet of open air, stairs rattling under our feet. The cabin at the top was small, maybe 12 feet by 12 feet, with windows on all 4 sides offering a 360-degree view of the forest. Inside was a single bed, a desk with radio equipment, a small propane stove, shelves with supplies, a chair. Everything was clean and organized, almost obsessively so. There were binoculars hanging on a hook, a fire finder mounted by the west window, weather instruments, logbooks, professional, normal. Except for the way Ray kept checking his watch, glancing at the sun's position through the windows. "Radio's channel 7 for the ranger station," he said, talking fast. "Weather reports every morning at 0800. Firefinders calibrated, use it to triangulate any smoke you see. Propane tanks under the platform, enough for 3 months. Supply drop comes every 2 weeks, they'll radio first." He was pulling things out of drawers, shoving them into a backpack. "Ray, slow down, what's going on?" "I can't slow down. Sun's going down in 40 minutes and I need to be off this mountain before dark." "Why?" He stopped, looked at me with something close to panic. You'll see tonight and you'll understand." He grabbed a weathered notebook from the desk drawer, thrust it at me. His hands were shaking. "There are rules, you have to follow them exactly. No exceptions, no testing them, no trying to be smart about them." I took the notebook. It was old, the cover worn soft, pages dog-eared and stained. Multiple people had written in it over the years, different handwriting, different ink colors. "What kind of rules?" Ray took a breath, steadied himself. When he spoke, his voice had the quality of someone reciting something memorized through repetition and fear. "Rule 1. Never leave the tower between sunset and sunrise. Stay inside. Lock the door. Don't go out for any reason." I started to say something, but he held up a hand. "Rule 2. If you hear someone calling your name from the forest, do not respond and do not look toward the sound. Doesn't matter who it sounds like. Don't answer. Don't look." This was starting to sound like the kind of joke experienced lookouts played on new guys. But Ray's expression was deadly serious. "Rule 3. Keep the red lantern lit every night from dusk until dawn. There's one on the desk. If it goes out, relight it immediately. Don't let it stay dark. He pointed to an old red lantern, the kind that burns kerosene. Rule 4. Do not acknowledge the woman in the white dress if you see her on the trail. She is not real. Don't wave, don't watch her, don't react. Pretend she isn't there. Rule 5. If you wake up and find all your windows open, close them without looking outside. Close them fast and lock them. Rule 6. Never answer the radio between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., no matter who seems to be calling. Turn the volume down during that hour if you need to. Rule 7. On nights when you hear the bells, stay in the center of the room until they stop. Don't touch the walls, don't look out the windows. Center of the room. He finished and waited, watching my face. I looked down at the notebook, at the rules written in careful handwriting, underlined, annotated by different people over the years. This had to be hazing, some kind of tradition to scare new lookouts. Ray, come on, is this a joke? His face went hard. I had a partner, his name was Marcus. We were supposed to split shifts, take turns. Third night he heard someone calling his name, sounded like his daughter. She's 6 years old, lives with his ex in Cheyenne. He knew she couldn't be here, but he looked anyway. He answered. Ray's voice cracked. I heard him screaming in the forest. They never found his body. Search and rescue looked for 5 days. Nothing, not a trace. I stared at him, trying to determine if he was serious. The fear in his eyes looked real, too real. Just follow the rules, Ray said. Please, your life depends on it. He grabbed the last of his belongings and headed for the stairs. I followed him down to ground level. His truck was packed, engine running. The sun was touching the western horizon, maybe 30 minutes of light left. Wait, I have questions. About the job, about the equipment, about. Figure it out, you seem smart, just follow the rules. He climbed into his truck, hands gripping the wheel like a lifeline. Ray, wait. But he was already moving, truck bouncing down the rutted road, accelerating faster than was safe. I watched his taillights disappear into the trees. And then I was alone. The silence settled over me like a weight. No traffic sounds, no voices, no city hum, just wind in the pines and the distant cry of a hawk. The sun was sinking fast now, shadows stretching long across the clearing. I looked up at the tower, at the small cabin perched 80 feet in the air, my home for the next 4 months. I climbed the stairs slowly, carrying my duffel. Inside the cabin, I set my bag on the bed and looked around more carefully. Now that Ray was gone, I could see the details he'd been too frantic to notice. Names carved into the wooden desk. Sarah K. Marcus R. Amanda C. Robert W. A dozen others, scratched into the wood like a desperate kind of memorial. Photos left behind, stuck in the frame of one window. Polaroids of previous lookouts, smiling at first, but in later photos looking thin and haunted, eyes too wide. A wall calendar from 2 years ago, days crossed off violently, black X's that tore through the paper. I found the red lantern on the desk, checked it. Full of kerosene, wick trimmed. I opened the notebook and read through the rules again. 7 rules, specific and strange. Never leave between sunset and sunrise. Don't respond to voices. Keep the red lantern lit. Ignore the woman in white. Close open windows without looking out. Don't answer the radio between 3 and 4 a.m. Stay in the center when you hear bells. I laughed, but it sounded nervous even to me. This is ridiculous. Forest Service employees pranking the new guy. But Ray's fear had seemed genuine. The way he'd run, the way he'd checked his watch obsessively as the sun dropped. And I was here alone, with night coming fast. I decided to humor them, just for tonight. Follow the silly rules, prove to myself there was nothing to worry about, and tomorrow I'd radio bait and ask what the real story was. I checked the lantern again, made sure I had matches. The sun was below the horizon now, twilight bleeding across the sky. According to the rules, I should light the lantern at dusk. I struck a match and touched it to the wick. The lantern glowed red, warm light filling the cabin. I locked the door, sat down at the desk, and waited. Darkness fell completely around 9 p.m. The forest became a black wall beyond the windows, absolute and featureless. No moon, no stars visible through the cloud cover, just the red glow of the lantern and the small circle of light it cast. I tried to read a book I'd brought but couldn't focus. The silence was enormous, pressing against the windows. Every creak of the tower settling made me jump. 10 p.m., nothing. 11 p.m., still nothing. I started to relax. Of course, nothing was happening. This was just wilderness, just forest, just a tower. The rules were tradition, folklore, meant to bond new lookouts through shared anxiety. At 11:47 p.m., I heard someone calling my name from the forest. The voice came from the southwest, from the direction of the trail Ray had pointed out during his hurried briefing. Ethan Crawford. I froze, book sliding from my hands. The voice was Sarah's, my ex-wife. Perfect inflection, the exact way she used to call me when I was in another room, that slightly musical lilt she had. Ethan, please, I need to talk to you. I'm sorry about everything. My heart was slamming against my ribs. Sarah was in Denver, 400 miles away. She didn't have a car. There was no possible way she could be here, in the middle of the Shoshone National Forest in the dark. But the voice was perfect. Ethan, I drove all this way. Please don't ignore me. I know I hurt you. Rule 2. If you hear someone calling your name from the forest, do not respond and do not look toward the sound. I stood up, moved toward the southwest window. My hand was reaching for the binoculars. I went to our restaurant, Ethan. The one where you proposed. Do you remember? You were so nervous. That detail. That specific personal detail. We'd gotten engaged at a little Italian place in Lodu, March 14th, 3 years ago. I had been nervous, hands shaking when I pulled out the ring. How could anyone else know that? Please, Ethan, why won't you answer me, please? The voice was getting closer, moving through the forest, coming toward the tower. Every instinct in my body screamed to look, to check, to verify. What if it really was Sarah? What if something had happened? What if she was hurt? What if she'd driven here for some desperate reason, and now she was lost in the dark forest? My hand was on the binoculars. Then I remembered Ray's face, the terror in his eyes. I had a partner. He heard someone calling his name. He looked anyway. I heard him screaming in the forest. I stepped back from the window, sat down in the chair, gripped the armrests. Ethan, I can see your light. Why won't you answer me, please? The voice had reached the base of the tower, directly below me now, maybe 80 feet down. Etiachayan, answer me. I know you can hear me. The tone shifted. Sarah's warmth was gone, replaced by something flat and angry, not quite right, like someone doing an impression who was starting to slip. I covered my ears, started counting in my head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. The voice continued, louder now, demanding, but the words started to blur together, losing coherence. Sarah's voice, but with wrong rhythms, syllables stretched too long. Ethan, answer me. And then, at 17 minutes past midnight, it stopped. Not gradually, not fading away. It cut off mid-word like someone had unplugged a speaker. Absolute silence rushed back in. I sat there shaking for 30 minutes, hands still over my ears, not daring to move. Finally, slowly, I lowered my hands and looked toward the southwest window. Nothing, just darkness and the faint shapes of pine trees silhouetted against the slightly lighter sky. I didn't sleep that night, just sat in the chair, watching the red lantern burn, waiting for dawn. When the sun came up at 5:43 a.m., I felt like I'd aged 10 years. I made coffee on the propane stove with shaking hands, ate a granola bar that tasted like cardboard, sat at the desk and tried to process what had happened. At 8 a.m., the radio crackled to life. Bates' voice, professional and distant. Tower 12, this is Base. Morning check-in. I grabbed the handset. Base, this is Tower 12, I'm here. Weather. I looked out the windows. Clear sky, no clouds. Clear, no wind, visibility excellent. Copy that, any smoke? No smoke. Good, everything else okay up there? I hesitated. How did I ask this? Bait, last night I heard something, a voice, in the forest. Pause. When she came back, her tone was carefully neutral. Did you follow the protocols? The rules, yeah. I didn't respond. I didn't look. Then you're fine. Anything else to report? What was it? What was that voice? Another pause, longer this time. That's not something we discuss on official channels, Ethan. Just follow the protocols and you'll be okay. Base out. The radio went silent. I stood there holding the handset, feeling very alone. The first week passed in a strange rhythm. Days were beautiful, peaceful, almost meditative. I'd wake up with the sun, make coffee, scan the forest for smoke with the binoculars and fire finder. There never was any. The weather stayed clear and hot, humidity low, fire danger minimal despite it being peak season. I'd read books, do maintenance on the tower, clean the cabin obsessively. The isolation was exactly what I'd wanted. No emails, no phone calls, no reminders of my failed marriage or lost job. Just me and the forest and the sky. But the nights were different. I followed the rules religiously, lit the red lantern every evening at dusk, locked the door, stayed inside no matter what I heard. And I heard things. Night 3, knocking on the tower legs, rhythmic and deliberate like someone climbing the stairs. But when I looked, no one was there. Night 5, wind chimes, delicate and musical, though there were no chimes anywhere near the tower. Night 7, breathing sounds outside the windows, heavy and wet. Each time I followed the rules. Didn't investigate, didn't respond, didn't look too closely. Just sat in the center of the room with the red lantern and waited for dawn. I started reading the journals I'd found hidden in a compartment under the floorboards. Ray had mentioned them briefly before he ran. There were 7 of them, dating back years. The most recent was Ray's. His handwriting started neat and organized, daily logs of weather and wildlife sightings. But as the days progressed, the entries became shorter, more frantic. June 8, Marcus didn't believe the rules. He thought they were superstition. I tried to warn him. June 9, Marcus is gone. They're searching, but I know they won't find him. It took him. I heard it happen. June 11, alone now. Can't sleep. It knows my name. It knows everything about me. June 15, how much longer until my replacement arrives? Can't do this much longer. June 19, I keep thinking about breaking Rule 1, just running into the forest and not stopping. Would that be better than this? June 21, new guy arrives today. I'm leaving. I don't care what they say. I can't stay another night. There was a journal from 3 summers ago, written by someone named Amanda Chen. She'd approached it more scientifically at first, trying to document and understand the phenomena. July 2, heard voice of my brother. He died in 2014. Voice was perfect, new details only he would know. Did not respond per Rule 2. Voice stopped after 12 minutes. July 7, temperature dropped to 41 degrees at 2 a.m. despite being 73 degrees at midnight. No weather system to explain this. Windows began rattling. Secured them per Rule 5. July 12, saw woman in white dress on trail. Appeared to be mid-30s, long dark hair, dress from wrong era 1920s. Did not acknowledge per Rule 4. She stood motionless for 34 minutes, then vanished. Not walked away. Vanished. July 19, partner Marcus broke Rule 2, heard his daughter's voice. I tried to stop him. He went outside. I heard him screaming. Search teams found nothing. I am alone. The handwriting deteriorated after that. Her scientific detachment crumbled. July 22, it's not a ghost. It's something else. Something that collects us. Our voices, our faces, our memories. The rules keep us from being collected. August 15. Getting hard to remember who I was before. When I look in mirror, sometimes I'm not sure that's my face. September 1, leaving tomorrow, must leave. Can't become like the others, can't let it take me. The final entry was barely legible. September 2, if you're reading this, follow the rules. They work. They're the only thing that works. Don't try to understand. Don't try to fight. Just follow the rules and leave in September. Leave before it's too late. I found an even older journal from the 1970s, written by someone named Robert Wade. His entries were sporadic but chilling. August 23, 1978, Catherine Reeves brought her son despite regulations. Boy was 16, didn't believe the warnings. Last night he went outside during a voice event. Catherine tried to save him. Both gone now. Search teams have been out for 3 days. Nothing. September 5, 1978, they found Catherine's body 2 miles from Tower. Coroner says she'd been dead for weeks, but I saw her on the trail yesterday. She waved at me. I didn't wave back. September 8, 1978, I quit today. Told them I don't care about the money. Something lives in this forest. It wears people. I won't let it wear me. I sat in the cabin with these journals spread around me, feeling the weight of all those previous lookouts, all their fear and their warnings and their desperate attempts to survive something they couldn't explain. On the 8th day, I radioed Bate during the scheduled check-in. Bate, I need to ask about the tower's history. Silence then, what do you want to know? How many people have quit this position? That's not relevant to your current duties. It's relevant to me, how many? She sighed. In the last 3 years, 17, most don't make it past a month. And Ray's partner, Marcus. Missing person case, still open. We searched extensively. What happened to him? Ethan, I can't discuss that on this channel. Then what can you discuss? Because I'm sitting in a tower hearing voices of dead people and seeing things that shouldn't exist, and everyone keeps telling me to just follow the rules without explaining why. Long pause. When Bates spoke again, her voice was quieter, more human. The rules work, Ethan. I know they seem crazy. I know you want answers. But the only thing that matters is the rules work. People who follow them survive. People who don't. She trailed off. People who don't what? Don't come back. That night 9, was when everything escalated. I'd fallen into a routine by the 9th night. Light the lantern at dusk, lock the door, position myself in the center of the cabin with a book and the radio turned low. Wait for the phenomena to start, follow the rules, survive until dawn. The air felt different that evening, heavier. The temperature was dropping faster than usual, and there was a smell on the wind I couldn't identify, like ozone before a storm, but the sky was clear. I lit the red lantern at 8:37 p.m., just as the last light faded from the western horizon. Settled into the chair with a paperback thriller I'd brought from Denver. Tried to focus on the words. At 9:47 p.m., I heard the child crying. It started faint, somewhere in the forest to the north. A young boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, sobbing like his heart was breaking. Help me, please, I'm lost. Every parental instinct I didn't know I had fired at once. The sound of a terrified child cuts through every rational defense. I was on my feet before I realized I'd moved. Please, it's dark. I can't find my mom. Please help me. The voice was moving, getting closer, coming toward the tower. Rule 2, do not respond, do not look. But this was a child, a little boy alone in the dark forest crying for help. I'm scared, please, someone help me. I grabbed the binoculars, started toward the north window, then stopped. Marcus didn't believe the rules. He thought they were superstition. I forced myself back to the center of the room, sat down hard in the chair, gripped the armrests. The crying got louder, closer, now at the base of the tower. Please, it's getting closer. Something's coming. Please help me. My hands were shaking, sweat running down my face despite the cold. Every fiber of my being wanted to run down those stairs and find that child. But I'd read the journals. I'd seen what happened to people who broke the rules. The crying changed, became my mother's voice. Ethan, baby, I'm hurt. I fell on the trail. Please help your mother. Perfect, exactly her voice, her inflection. She called me baby when I was young, stopped when I hit my teens, but this voice remembered. I think my leg is broken. Please, Ethan, please. I covered my ears, started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why won't you help me? What kind of son are you? 5, 6, 7, 8. The voice changed again. Sarah. This is why I left you. You don't care about anyone but yourself. You're hiding in a tower because you can't face real life. The words hit like physical blows because part of me believed them. Part of me had been thinking exactly that. You're a failure, Ethan. A coward, that's why you're alone. My hand was on the door handle. Just check, just look. Maybe it is real. Maybe someone needs help. Then I heard it, the slip. Your daughter misses you. I froze. I don't have a daughter. Sarah and I never had kids. It was one of the things we fought about. The voice had made a mistake. I pulled my hand back from the door, sat down, and for the first time that night, I felt a surge of anger instead of fear. It was reading my emotions, my memories, but imperfectly. It knew Sarah existed, knew my mother, knew my pain, but it was guessing at details, filling in gaps wrong. The voice continued for another hour, cycling through people I knew, people I'd loved, people I'd lost. But now I could hear the wrongness in it. The rhythm too perfect, the tone too flat. Uncanny valley, like AI-generated speech that almost sounds human but not quite. At 11:12 p.m., the voice stopped. Cut off mid-sentence, that same sudden silence. I sat there breathing hard, drenched in sweat, but I'd done it. I'd followed the rules. I hadn't looked, hadn't responded, hadn't broken. Morning came eventually, the way it always does. I was exhausted, wired on adrenaline and fear, but alive. I made coffee and forced myself to eat. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I went outside in daylight and checked the area where the voices had been. The stairs rang hollow under my boots as I descended. The forest was beautiful in morning light, peaceful and innocent. Birds singing, squirrels chattering, a deer watching me from the tree line. I walked the perimeter of the tower, looking for footprints, any evidence someone had been there. Nothing, the ground was undisturbed, pine needles and dirt unmarked. Then I found them. Dead birds, 7 of them, arranged in a perfect circle about 20 feet from the tower's north leg, right where the first crying voice had seemed to originate. They were ravens and they'd been dead for days. I could tell by the state of decomposition. But the circle they formed was fresh, the dirt recently disturbed. Someone or something had arranged them. I backed away slowly, feeling watched. Back in the tower, I added an entry to my own journal, which I'd started keeping. Day 9, the rules are real. Whatever is out there, it's intelligent. It learns. It adapts. It knows things about me it shouldn't know, but it makes mistakes. It's not human no matter how well it mimics us. The rules work. I'm starting to understand why. That afternoon, during my supply check, I found something I'd missed before. A loose floorboard near the bed. Under it was a metal box. Inside were more journals, older ones, and photographs. Polaroids of previous lookouts. I recognized Amanda Chen from her ID photo in one of the journals. Young, smiling, healthy-looking in the first photo. The second photo, dated 2 months later, showed someone who'd aged decades. Hollow eyes, gaunt face, gray streaks in her hair that hadn't been there before. There was a newspaper clipping from 1983. Search called off for missing hikers. 6 people had vanished in this part of Shoshone National Forest, never found. All within 5 miles of Tower 12. I read Robert Wade's full journal. He'd been here in 1978, and he'd documented everything methodically before it broke him. "They're not ghosts," he wrote in careful block letters. "They're something older. The Shoshone tribes called this area the place where voices live. They avoided it, warned settlers to avoid it. No one listened. Catherine Reeves and her son. I tried to warn them. The boy thought it was a game. On August 23rd, he heard his dead grandfather calling. He went outside. Catherine went after him. We found her body 3 weeks later. Medical examiner said she'd been dead for approximately 18 days, but I saw her on the trail on day 19, on day 20, on day 21. She was walking. She waved at me each time. Whatever took her was wearing her. I quit the next day. I don't know what happens to people who stay too long. I don't want to know." I closed the journal, hands shaking. The sun was setting again. Time to light the lantern. The second week began, and I fell into a cautious, paranoid routine. I followed the rules like they were sacred text. Red lantern lit at dusk, never a minute late. Door locked and checked 3 times. Windows secured. I'd positioned the chair in the exact center of the 12-by-12 cabin, measured it to be sure. I studied Amanda's journal obsessively. She'd been methodical, scientific, before the isolation and phenomena broke her. Her observations became my survival guide. Phenomena stronger during new moon, she'd written, weakest during full moon. Temperature drops precede major events. Average drop, 15-20 degrees in under 10 minutes. They test boundaries. They learn. Each night they adapt based on previous attempts. The next full moon wasn't until July 7th, 3 weeks away. I checked the calendar. New moon had been June 19th, 3 days before I'd arrived. That explained the intensity of the first week. I'd walked into their peak period without knowing it. Days I kept busy. I actually did the job I was hired for, scanning the forest for smoke, logging weather data, maintaining the equipment. The work was meditative, gave me something to focus on besides dread. I radioed Bate every morning at 8 a.m. sharp. Our conversations were brief, professional. She never asked how I was really doing, and I never volunteered. What would I say? I'm being hunted by something that wears human voices like masks. She already knew. Everyone knew. On day 11, things changed. I went to bed around 10 p.m., exhausted from another sleepless night. The phenomena had been minor, just distant sounds, nothing that directly violated the rules. I'd thought maybe I could actually sleep. I woke at 2:47 a.m. to the windows rattling. All 4 windows, simultaneously, shaking violently in their frames. The sound was enormous in the small cabin, like someone was outside gripping them, trying to wrench them open. I sat up, instantly alert, heart hammering. Rule 5. If you wake up and find all windows open, close them without looking outside. But they weren't open yet. They were trying to open. The latches were straining, wood creaking under pressure. Something outside was pulling them. The temperature plummeted. I could see my breath. The thermometer on the wall, which had read 68 degrees when I went asleep, now showed 43. I watched in horror as the first latch slipped. The north window flew open with a bang. Cold air rushed in, and with it, a smell. Rotting vegetation and something worse. Something dead. I jumped out of bed, ran to the window. Grabbed it without looking outside, yanked it closed, locked it. The second window on the east side slammed open. I heard breathing. Heavy, wet, like someone with fluid in their lungs. I crossed the cabin, grabbed that window, pulled it shut, locked it, Never looked out, kept my eyes on the interior wall. The south and west windows opened simultaneously, both latches giving way at once. Blast of cold from both directions. The breathing sound intensified, circling the tower. Multiple sources, more than one thing out there. I moved fast, closing, locking, securing. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't work the latches. Finally, all 4 windows closed and locked. The breathing continued outside, moving around the platform. I could track it by sound. Slow, deliberate, circling, predatory. I stood in the center of the cabin, the red lantern casting wild shadows, watching the windows, waiting for them to attack again. 41 minutes. I timed it. The breathing circled for 41 minutes. Then it stopped. Temperature began rising immediately. Within 10 minutes, it was back to 68 degrees. Like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep again that night. Morning check-in with Bait at 8 a.m. Tower 12 weather report. I gave her the data mechanically. Clear skies, no wind, visibility unlimited. Everything else nominal, she asked. The windows, I said. Last night, all 4 tried to open. Pause. Did you follow protocol? Yes, I closed them. I didn't look. Then you're fine. Bait, what is it? What's trying to get in? Longer pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end, deciding what to say. I was stationed at Tower 12 in 2019, she said finally. Lasted the full season. It's why I work this job now, why I coordinate the lookouts, because I understand. Understand what? That some places are wrong, Ethan. Not haunted, not cursed, just wrong. The rules don't explain it, they just keep you alive. That's all you need to know. But what happens if you break them? You don't come back, not as yourself anyway. Bait out. The radio went silent. I spent that day reinforcing the window latches with spare wire I found in the supply closet. It probably wouldn't help, but it made me feel like I was doing something. That night, I learned about the bells. It was 11:23 p.m. I was at the desk, trying to read but mostly just waiting for dawn. The red lantern burned steady. The cabin was locked tight, everything according to protocol. Then I heard them. Bells, church bells, clear and beautiful, impossibly coming from the forest where no church existed for 70 miles. Rule 7. On nights when you hear the bells, stay in the center of the room until they stop. I moved to the center immediately, sat down on the floor. The bells were getting closer, ringing from multiple directions. Deep bronze tones that should have been comforting but instead filled me with primal dread. While the bells rang, I saw her. The woman in the white dress. She appeared on the north trail, maybe 100 yards out, visible in the starlight. White dress from another era, long and flowing. Dark hair. Pale skin that seemed to glow faintly. Rule 4. Do not acknowledge the woman in the white dress. She is not real. I stared at the ceiling, refusing to track her movement. But I could hear her. Footsteps on the trail coming closer. The bells continued their discordant symphony. The footsteps reached the base of the tower, then started up the stairs. Metal clanging under feet, slow, measured steps climbing. The bells surrounded the tower now, ringing from all sides. I sat in the center, arms wrapped around my knees, staring at the lantern. The footsteps climbed higher, 40 feet, 60 feet, 70 feet. They reached the platform outside the cabin. The door handle turned. Slowly, deliberately testing. The door was locked. I always kept it locked, even during the day now. The handle turned for 5 minutes straight, back and forth, patient, relentless. Then the bells stopped. All at once, mid-ring, cutting to silence. The handle stopped turning. Footsteps descended the stairs, the same measured pace. I waited 10 more minutes, barely breathing, before I dared to move. In the morning, I found them. Handprints on the outside of the door. Small, delicate woman's hands, but wrong. The texture was wrong. I could see fabric pattern in the prints like the hands had been covered in cloth, and when I touched one, it was ice cold. The prints faded as the sun rose higher, evaporating like frost. I took photos with the digital camera I'd brought, but when I looked at them later, the prints didn't show up. Just the door empty. Some things don't want to be documented. That night, day 14, I learned they could coordinate. 3 a.m. I was awake, always awake now. Sleep had become something I did in desperate snatches during daylight. The bells started early, 2:58 a.m. to be exact. I moved to the center of the room. While the bells rang, I heard the voices. Multiple voices, all people I knew, all calling my name from different directions. North, my mother. South, Sarah. East, my college roommate, Jake. West, my father. All talking at once, overlapping, creating a wall of sound designed to overwhelm. And while the voices called and the bells rang, the windows began rattling again. They were testing multiple rules simultaneously, seeing if I'd break under combined pressure. I sat in the center, hands over my ears, eyes squeezed shut, reciting the rules in my head like a mantra. Don't look, don't answer, stay in the center, keep the lantern lit. Don't leave, don't open, don't acknowledge. The assault lasted 93 minutes. When it ended, the silence was so sudden and complete that my ears rang. I'd survived, but I could feel myself changing. The isolation, the nightly terror, the constant vigilance. It was wearing me down in ways I couldn't quite articulate. I looked in the small mirror above the sink and barely recognized myself. I'd lost weight, dark circles under my eyes, hair disheveled. I looked like the photos of previous lookouts, like Ray when he'd fled. How long could I do this? 3.5 more months. I opened Amanda's journal, looking for hope, for some indication she'd found a way to cope. Day 45, she'd written. I understand now. They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to collect us. Our voices, our faces, our memories. The rules keep us from being added to their collection. But each night they get a little more of us anyway. Little pieces. The fear, the isolation, the slow erosion of self. By the time September comes, will I remember who I was? I closed the journal, looked out at the forest, beautiful and deadly in the morning light, and wondered the same thing. Week 3, 21 days in the tower. I developed a routine that kept me functional barely. Sleep during midday when the sun was high and the forest felt safer. Read the journals at dawn. Maintain equipment in the afternoon. Prepare mentally for nightfall. I needed answers. Not about what it was, I'd accepted I might never understand that, but about why this was allowed to continue. Why the Forest Service kept sending people up here. Why they didn't just close the tower permanently. During morning check-in, I pressed bait harder than I had before. Bait, I need to know the real story. How many people have been lost to this place? Static, then her voice, careful. That's not information I can share on official channels. Off the record then, please. I'm going crazy up here and I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Long pause. I could hear her breathing, weighing the decision. 6 people have disappeared within 5 miles of Tower 12 in the last 40 years. Officially missing, never found. 3 were hikers, 2 were lookouts. One was, she stopped. One was what? A child, 16 years old, son of a lookout named Catherine Reeves, 1978. I already knew about Catherine and her son from Robert Wade's journal, but hearing it confirmed made it real in a different way. What happened to Catherine? They found her body 3 weeks after she disappeared, but search team members reported seeing her on the trails for days after she was found, walking, responsive. Then she'd vanish. That's not possible. I know what's possible, Ethan. I've been up there. I know what you're experiencing isn't possible either, but it's real. I changed tactics. The locals in Kirby, they know something. The gas station attendant warned me off. The woman in the store told me not to stay past September. Why September? Bates' voice dropped lower. Because that's when it gets worse. The phenomena intensify as fall approaches. No one knows why. Seasonal thing maybe, or something about the changing light. Doesn't matter. The contract ends September 30th for a reason. No one stays into October. Ever. What happens in October? We don't know. Everyone who's tried to find out didn't come back. After the radio call, I tore the cabin apart looking for more information. There had to be older records, more journals, something that explained the history. I found them behind a loose panel in the back wall, a waterproof box containing documents dating back to 1952. The earliest was a typed report on Forest Service letterhead. Incident Report Tower 12, Shoshone National Forest. Date, September 15, 1952. Lookout James Morrison, 22 days service. Status disappeared. Lookout Morrison failed to respond to scheduled radio check on morning of Sept 15. Ranger team dispatched to tower found cabin empty, all personal effects present, no sign of struggle. Search conducted within 5-mile radius. No trace of Morrison found. Notable Morrison's journal found on desk. Final entry dated Sept 14, 2300 hours reads, "They're inside now. I don't know how, but they're inside. I can hear them behind the walls. I followed all the rules. Why are they still here? I can't tell which voice is mine anymore." Recommendation: post to remain unmanned until further investigation. But the tower hadn't remained unmanned. 6 months later, another lookout, then another. The reports continued through the decades. Different people, same stories, voices, figures, rules that kept some safe but not others, missing persons, bodies found in impossible states of decay, sightings of the dead walking. I found a letter written in 1963 by a Forest Service supervisor to the regional director. "Sir, regarding your inquiry about Tower 12, yes, the post has an unusual rate of personnel turnover and incident reports. However, it provides critical fire coverage for a 12-mile radius of high-value timber. The cost of relocating the tower would be prohibitive. We have developed operational protocols that appear to mitigate most safety concerns. Personnel who follow these protocols have an acceptable survival rate. While the psychological strain is admittedly high, we believe with proper screening and briefing, suitable candidates can be found. I recommend we continue current operations with enhanced mental health monitoring." They knew they'd always known. And they decided the fire coverage was worth the risk to human lives. I felt sick, but I kept reading because I needed to understand everything. Robert Wade's journal had a section I'd missed before, tucked in the back pages. Local research he'd written. Talked to Shoshone elder in Riverton, man named Thomas Black Elk, 87 years old. He told me this. That place where the white man built his tower, our people called it the Dwahnui. The word doesn't translate exactly. Closest meaning, where the voices wear skins. Very old place. Old when my grandfather's grandfather was young. The spirits there are not our spirits, not spirits of animals or ancestors, something else, something that was here before everything. They hunger for the living. They take pieces, small pieces, voice first, then face, then the self. If you let them take enough pieces, there's nothing left of you to save. Our people knew the signs. We left markers, warnings. We told the settlers. They didn't listen. They built their tower right in the heart of it. I asked him how to fight it. He said, "You don't fight, you protect yourself. You follow the old rules, and you leave before they take too much." I asked what the old rules were. He gave me 7. I wrote them down. They were almost identical to the rules we use now. The rules existed before the tower. The lookouts didn't create them, they just rediscovered what the Shoshone already knew. So the rules were older than I'd thought. Ancient knowledge preserved and adapted. That should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified me. Because it meant this thing, whatever it was, had been here for centuries. Millennia, maybe. How do you fight something that old? I found Amanda's later entries, the ones after Marcus disappeared. Day 45. I've been researching using the reference books in the supply cache. There are patterns here. The entities, I'm calling them collectors, operate on specific principles. They cannot create, only mimic. Everything they use, voices, faces, knowledge, was taken from someone. They are bound by natural laws we don't understand. The rules work because they exploit these laws. They are strongest at certain times. New moon, 3-4 a.m., transitions between seasons. They are patient, immortal maybe. They've been here longer than us and will be here after. They want something from us, not death collection. Day 67. I realized something horrible today. Every voice I've heard over the last 2 months, I recognized them. My brother who died in 2014, Marcus after he disappeared, my grandmother who passed in 2009. They're all people who died or disappeared. The collectors are using them, wearing their voices like clothes. Which means somewhere in their collection they have hundreds of people, maybe thousands. Everyone who ever died here or got too close. All those voices, all those faces, preserved and recycled. We're not being haunted by ghosts. We're being hunted by something that turns people into tools. Day 89, last entry. I'm leaving tomorrow, September 1st. I've made it through the summer, but I can feel myself slipping. When I look in the mirror, sometimes I see my brother's face looking back. Sometimes Marcus. Sometimes people I don't recognize. It's starting to collect me even though I followed the rules. Little pieces at a time. Soon there won't be enough of me left to leave. If you're reading this, the rules work, but they're not perfect. They slow the collection but don't stop it completely. Get out in September. Don't stay past September. Don't ever think you can beat them by staying. They always win eventually. They have time, we don't. I put down the journal, hands shaking. Looked at the calendar. June 29th, 2 months left until my contract ended. 2 months of nightly attacks, erosion collection. Would there be enough of me left at the end to leave? I didn't know, but I understood now why Ray had run, why 17 lookouts had quit in 3 years, why everyone who lasted the full season came out changed. This wasn't a job, it was survival, and every night I stayed was a night I gave them more pieces of myself. The question was, how many pieces could I afford to lose before I wasn't Ethan Crawford anymore? Night 26 brought something new. I'd been tracking patterns in Amanda's journal, noting that the collectors seemed to cycle through different approaches. Physical intimidation for a few nights, then vocal attacks, then visual phenomena. They were testing, learning what worked on me specifically. Tonight they tried something different. 1:33 a.m. I woke from a shallow sleep to the sound of a child crying. Not the fake crying from before, the obvious attempt to trigger protective instincts. This was different, quieter, more genuine, the kind of crying that comes from real pain, real fear. Help me, I'm lost, please help me. Young boy, maybe 6 years old, sobbing, terrified, alone in the dark. Every evolutionary instinct in my brain screamed that this was a child in danger, and I had to help. Rule 2. Do not respond to voices calling your name. But it wasn't calling my name. It was just crying, asking for help in general. That's how they adapted. They'd learned Rule 2 worked on me, so they modified the approach. Not calling me specifically, just a child in distress that any decent person would respond to. Please, it's dark. I can't find my mom, please. The voice moved around the tower perimeter, lost in searching. I sat in the center of the room, fists clenched, trying not to listen. But the crying continued, desperate and real. I'm scared, please, someone help me. 20 minutes of this. A small child alone, terrified, begging for rescue. I was sweating despite the cold. My hands were shaking. I wanted desperately to call out, to guide the voice to safety, to do something. Then it changed. The child's voice morphed seamlessly into my mother's voice. "Ethan, baby, I'm hurt. I fell on the trail. Please help your mother." Perfect reproduction. The exact way she'd called me when I was young. The concern mixed with expectation that I'd come running. "I think my leg is broken. Please, Ethan, please." I covered my ears, but the voice cut through. "Why won't you help me? What kind of son are you?" The accusation hit harder than it should have. My relationship with my mom was complicated. I'd moved to Denver partly to get distance from her well-meaning but suffocating care. I called her once a week out of obligation more than desire. And now, with my life in shambles, I hadn't told her about the divorce or the job loss. Hadn't wanted to hear the disappointment. The voice knew exactly where to dig. "I raised you better than this. I sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay me, hiding when I need you." Guilt crashed over me in waves. Parts of that were true. She had sacrificed, and I had been hiding in a sense, running away from my problems to a tower in the middle of nowhere. My hand moved toward the door without conscious decision. The voice shifted again. "Sarah, now. This is why I left you, Ethan. You don't care about anyone but yourself. You run away when things get hard. You're a coward." Every insecurity, every fear about why my marriage had failed, all of it weaponized. "You're a failure, as a husband, as a son, as a person. That's why you're alone in this tower. That's why everyone leaves you eventually." The words carved into me because they echoed my own thoughts during the worst nights in Denver. The spiral of depression and self-loathing that had nearly drowned me. You couldn't even keep a simple job, couldn't keep your wife. Can't face the real world, so you hide here like a child. Pathetic. My hand was on the door handle now. Just look. Just check. Maybe someone really does need help. Maybe I'm just crazy and there's a rational explanation for all of this. Then Sarah's voice said, "Your daughter is ashamed of you." I froze. "Daughter? I don't have a daughter." The voice had made a mistake. It was reading my emotions, my memories, accessing somehow the deep fears and guilt I carried. But it was filling in gaps, making assumptions. It knew Sarah existed, knew my mother, knew my pain, but it was guessing at the details. I pulled my hand back from the door, sat down hard. The voice continued, but now I could hear the wrongness in it. The slight mechanical quality underneath, the too perfect reproduction that dipped occasionally into uncanny valley. "Ethan, please, I need you. Don't you love me anymore?" Sarah had never said those exact words. She'd been more passive-aggressive in our fights, more subtle. This was what the collector thought she might say, based on patterns, but it wasn't quite right. I started listening analytically instead of emotionally, cataloging the errors. My mother's voice referenced a memory that hadn't happened. "Remember when you broke your arm falling off the jungle gym?" I'd never broken my arm. My father's voice, when it cycled through, called me sport. He'd always called me kid. Small errors, but once I spotted them, I couldn't unhear them. The collectors were incredibly sophisticated but not perfect. They made mistakes. The assault continued for another hour, cycling through every person I'd ever cared about, every relationship I'd damaged or lost. The guilt, the shame, the fear. But now I had a defense beyond just following rules. I could spot the lies, find the gaps in their knowledge. When my college roommate Jake's voice mentioned a class we'd supposedly taken together that didn't exist, I almost smiled. When Sarah's voice referenced our first date at a restaurant we'd never been to, I felt the fear loosen slightly. They were powerful, they were terrifying, but they weren't omniscient. The voices stopped at 2:47 a.m., 94 minutes of psychological warfare. I survived. But I was shaking, drenched in sweat, emotionally gutted. Even knowing the voices were fake didn't make the words hurt less. They'd found every weakness, every insecurity, every painful truth. I wrote in my journal, day 26. They're getting more sophisticated. Personal attacks now, psychological rather than just scary. They know me, but they're not perfect. They make mistakes. Small errors in details, in phrasing. That's how you can tell. Listen for the wrongness. It's there if you pay attention. But then I wrote, how much more can I take? Each night strips away another layer. I'm holding on but barely. Is this what happened to Amanda, to Marcus, to all the others? Did they reach a point where they just couldn't fight anymore? I looked at the calendar, still 2 months to go. 60 more nights like this. I didn't know if I'd make it. The weather turned on day 33. Storm systems rolled in from the west, dark clouds piling up against the mountains. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The barometer dropped steadily through the afternoon. I checked Amanda's notes. Phenomena stronger during storms. Electrical activity, atmospheric pressure changes, something about it amplifies them. And it was new moon again. The cycle had come around. Peak conditions. I prepared like I was going to war. Double-checked the lantern fuel, made sure I had backup. Secured the windows with extra wire. Positioned supplies in the center of the room where I could reach them without moving to the walls. Set my watch to alarm at 2:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the radio danger hour. Bates' voice on the 8 a.m. check-in was tense. Storm's supposed to be bad tonight. You okay up there? Yeah, I'm ready. Ethan, she paused, unusual for her. It's been a month, you've done well. Whatever happens tonight, just follow the rules. Don't break them no matter what. Don't try to fight. Don't try to understand. Just follow the rules and wait for dawn. You know something about tonight specifically. New moon plus electrical storm. It's going to be intense, but you can survive it, others have. How many others? Enough, be careful, bait out. The storm hit at 7 p.m. Rain pounding on the roof, wind shaking the tower, lightning illuminating the forest in strobing flashes. I lit the red lantern at dusk, locked the door, and settled into my position at the center of the cabin. 9:47 p.m. It began. The pounding started first. All four sides of the tower simultaneously, rhythmic and organized like a drumbeat. Not random wind or debris, deliberate, intelligent. The entire structure shook. Equipment rattled on the shelves. The lantern flame flickered and I cupped my hands around it protectively. Rule 3. Keep the lantern lit. The pounding intensified. Louder, faster. Something was climbing the tower legs, multiple somethings, coordinated. The metal rang like a gong with each impact. Then the scratching. Metal on metal, nails or claws dragging along the steel supports, going up and down, up and down. The sound set my teeth on edge. 10:38 p.m. The bells started. Rule 7. Stay in the center when you hear bells. I was already there, but I pulled my arms and legs in tighter, making myself as small as possible. The bells rang from every direction, surrounding the tower. Deep bronze tones that resonated in my chest. Through the windows, despite the rain and darkness, I saw them. Figures in white dresses, not one this time. 7 of them spaced evenly around the tower, all identical, all wrong. They stood motionless despite the wind and rain that should have been tearing at their clothes. Rule 4. Don't acknowledge the woman in white. I stared at the ceiling, refusing to track them. But I could hear them. 7 sets of footsteps started up the stairs, slow, synchronized, climbing in unison. The bells continued, the pounding continued, the scratching continued, the storm raged. 11:53 p.m. The voices began. Not one voice, dozens, hundreds maybe, all talking at once, every person I'd ever known. Family, friends, coworkers, teachers, childhood friends I hadn't thought about in years, all of them calling my name, begging, demanding, accusing. The wall of sound was overwhelming. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The voices seemed to come from inside my head as much as outside. My mother, Ethan, I'm dying, please, I need you. Sarah, I still love you, please give me another chance. My father, son, I'm so disappointed in you. Jake, why did you abandon me when I needed you? My boss, you're fired, you're worthless, you'll never succeed. Overlapping, chaotic, designed to break me. The 7 figures reached the platform outside. I could hear them circling the cabin. Their footsteps made wet sounds on the metal grating. Midnight, the temperature plummeted, 38 degrees according to the thermometer, and dropping. I could see my breath. The lantern flame turned blue at the edges. 1 a.m. The windows started rattling, trying to open themselves, all 4 at once, latches straining. I stayed in the center, hands protecting the lantern, eyes closed, trying to block out the sensory assault. The radio crackled to life, even though it was switched off. 2:58 a.m., almost radio danger hour. Sarah's voice came through the speaker. Ethan, pick up. It's important, it's about the divorce settlement. We need to talk, pick up now. Rule 6. Never answer the radio between 3 and 4 a.m. I didn't touch it. The voice changed, my boss. Ethan, we need you back. The job is yours. Just answer the radio and we'll discuss terms. Then my father. Son, your mother is in the hospital. She's asking for you. Please, this is serious. Each voice calibrated to make me want to respond. Emergency, opportunity, guilt. I stared at the radio, jaw clenched. 3 a.m. exactly. Everything intensified at once. The pounding became deafening. The tower swayed. Objects fell from shelves. The windows all flew open simultaneously, latches breaking under the pressure. Cold air and rain blasted in from all sides. The lantern almost went out. I cupped it desperately, shielding the flame with my body. The figures stepped inside. I couldn't see them, I was staring at the floor, but I could feel them. 7 presences in the cabin with me, circling, getting closer. The voices lost all pretense of humanity. They became screams, static sounds that shouldn't come from human throats, overlapping frequencies that made my ears hurt and my vision blur. Ethan, join US, give US, let US in. The words fragmented, electronic, alien. 3:33 a.m. The peak. Everything attacking at once. Physical, psychological, sensory overload designed to shatter my mind and make me break a rule, any rule. The figures were so close I could smell them. Decay and earth and something older. I felt pressure on my shoulders like hands gripping me. Cold spreading through my chest like ice water in my veins. I held the lantern, stayed in the center, kept my eyes closed, recited the rules in my head like a prayer. Don't leave, don't answer, don't look, don't acknowledge, close. Without looking, stay center, keep lantern lit. Over and over, the only thing anchoring me to reality. The assault reached a crescendo. The cabin itself seemed to be coming apart. I felt like my mind was being torn open, examined, catalogued. Then I heard it underneath all the noise. My own voice. Let me in, Ethan. I'm you. You can trust yourself. Open the door. Let yourself in. Perfect reproduction. Exactly how I sounded, using me against myself. That's when I understood. They'd been collecting pieces of me for 33 days. Every night I gave them more. Memories, fears, voice patterns, mannerisms. They'd taken enough to build a copy. Somewhere in their collection, there was now a version of Ethan Crawford, and they were using it. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, it made me angry. They didn't get to have me, not yet, not while I was still breathing and fighting. I opened my eyes, looked directly at the lantern's flame, focused on that tiny point of light in the chaos. I'm still here, I said out loud. I'm still me, you can't have me. 4 a.m. Everything stopped. Instantly, completely, like a switch being flipped. The voices cut off mid-scream. The figures vanished, not walked away, just ceased to exist. The bells silenced. The pounding ended. The storm continued, natural thunder and rain, but the supernatural assault was over. Temperature started rising immediately. The radio went dead. The windows hung open, rain coming in, but nothing malevolent came with it. I collapsed, still holding the lantern. 93 minutes. The attack had lasted 93 minutes. I'd survived. I sat there shaking until dawn, not daring to move, not trusting that it was really over. When the sun finally rose at 5:47 a.m., I carefully closed and secured the windows. The cabin was a disaster. Water everywhere, objects scattered, equipment damaged. But I was alive, still myself, still Ethan Crawford. I went outside in the morning light to inspect the tower. The platform had handprints burned into the metal. Hundreds of them, overlapping like a crowd, had pressed against the cabin. The metal was scorched, permanently marked. As I watched, the prints began to fade. By noon, they were gone completely. No evidence except my memories and the damage to my psyche. I radioed Bait at 8 a.m. I made it. New moon's the hardest, she said quietly. You did good, Ethan, really good. Most people don't make it through their first full-intensity event. How many more of these? That was the worst one. Next new moon's not until August. You've got time to recover. I laughed, but it sounded broken. Recover, right. I spent the rest of the day cleaning up, repairing what I could, but mostly just sitting, staring at the forest, trying to process what I'd survived. I wrote in my journal, day 33. Survived the worst they can throw at me, I think. They have a copy of me now. I heard my own voice trying to trick me. That's how it works. They collect us piece by piece until they can wear us like masks. But I'm still here, still fighting, still me. For now. The days after the full assault were strange, quieter. The phenomena continued, but at a lower intensity, like the collectors had expended their energy and needed time to rebuild. Or maybe they'd taken what they wanted and were satisfied for now. I spent the time researching, reading every journal, every document, trying to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. The collectors, I'd started calling them that after reading Amanda's journal, were intelligent. They learned patterns, adapted tactics, exploited weaknesses, but they were also bound by rules of their own, natural laws we didn't understand but could observe and exploit. They couldn't create, only mimic. Everything they used came from someone else. They were strongest at specific times. New moon, the dead hour between 3 and 4 a.m., transitions between seasons. They couldn't physically harm you if you followed the rules, but they could take pieces. Memories, voice patterns, mannerisms. Build copies to use later. And they were patient. Immortal, maybe. They'd been here for centuries, maybe millennia. They'd outlast me and everyone else who came to this tower. The question was, what did I do with this knowledge? I could quit, pack my things, radio for extraction, leave like Ray and so many others. No one would blame me. I'd lasted longer than most. 33 days through a full-intensity assault was more than the average. Or I could stay, finish the contract, prove to myself I could survive something impossible. Week 7 began. July was halfway over. The aspen trees in the valleys below were deep green. Eagles hunted in the thermals. The forest was beautiful in the daylight, easy to forget it became something else after dark. I made my decision. I was staying. Not because I wasn't afraid. I was terrified every single night. But I'd learned something up here that I hadn't known before. I'd learned I was stronger than I thought, that I could face impossible horror and come through it still myself. That mattered, After the divorce, after losing my job, after everything fell apart, I'd felt like a failure, weak, broken. But I wasn't. I was surviving something that had broken dozens of others, and maybe that meant I could survive anything. I started improving the rules based on my experience, added notes in the margins of the notebook. Rule 2, they make mistakes. Listen for wrong details, impossible memories, information they shouldn't have. That's how you can tell. Rule 3, keep backup lantern fuel accessible. They'll try to sabotage. I found my spare fuel containers moved one morning. Keep everything within reach. Rule 7, they're stronger during new moon, storms, and seasonal transitions. Mark your calendar. Prepare mentally on those days. I added new observations. Temperature drops precede events. Average 15 to 20 degrees in 10 minutes. When you feel it getting cold, get ready. They can appear as multiple entities simultaneously. Don't assume it's just one. They seem to feed on fear. The more afraid you are, the stronger they get. Anger works better as a defense than terror. They have limits. They can't break the fundamental rules any more than we can. Use that. I wrote letters to future lookouts, whoever came after me. To whoever reads this. You're not crazy. This is real. The rules work. Trust them even when everything in you says they're wrong. Listen for the mistakes. They're not perfect. They'll slip eventually. You're stronger than you know. You can do this. Thousands of nights have been survived in this tower. You can survive too. Don't try to understand what they are. You'll drive yourself crazy. Just accept that they exist and focus on following the rules. And leave in September. Don't ever think you can beat them by staying. You can't. Get out before they take too much. Mid-August, during a routine check-in, Bate opened up more than she usually did. You're doing well, Ethan. Better than most. How are you holding up mentally? I'm tired, but I'm okay, I think. You've developed coping mechanisms. I can hear it in your voice. That's good. That's important. Bate, can I ask you something? Maybe. When you were up here in 2019, what did you learn? Long pause. I learned that I was capable of surviving the impossible. That fear doesn't have to control you. That there are things in this world that don't make sense and probably never will, but that doesn't make them less real. Did it change you? Completely. I'm not the same person who climbed this tower in June 2019, but I don't think that's necessarily bad. Sometimes we need to be broken down to build ourselves back stronger. Do you regret it? No, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I'm proud I did it. And now I do this job, coordinate the lookouts, because I understand what you're going through. Maybe I can make it slightly easier for the next person. Why does the Forest Service keep sending people if they know? She sighed. Because the tower needs to be manned. Fire coverage, bureaucratic reasons, and maybe because some people need to know they can face the dark and survive. The world doesn't make sense, Ethan. We just do the best we can. September came with cooler nights and changing light. The aspen started turning gold. I could feel the shift in the forest, the transition from summer to fall. The phenomena intensified slightly, exactly as Amanda's journal had predicted. But I was ready for it, prepared mentally. I'd survived 2 new moon cycles. I could survive whatever September threw at me. September 14th, my last scheduled day, contract complete, 4 months survived. I packed my belongings slowly, carefully, cleaned the cabin one final time, left my journal hidden in the floor compartment with all the others, added my photos to the wall collection. I looked older in them, weathered, different. I looked at myself in the small mirror. I'd lost 15 pounds. My hair had more gray than it should at 29, deep lines around my eyes, but there was something else too, strength, confidence, the knowledge that I'd faced something impossible and won. My phone, back in service range as I packed my car, showed dozens of missed messages, job offers, friends checking in. My mother worried because I'd been out of contact. One email stood out. A good position in Denver, more money than my old job, flexible start date. I could go back, resume normal life, put this behind me. But was I the same person who could live that life? The radio crackled, Bates' voice. Ethan, your replacement arrives tomorrow afternoon. Her name's Julie Chen, first-time lookout. You planning to stick around for handoff? I thought about it. The rules said I should leave before dark. September 15th was the cutoff everyone warned about. But Julie was coming into this blind just like I had. Maybe I could help. Yeah, I said. I'll stay tonight, help her transition. You sure? September 15th. I know, but I'll leave at first light. She should at least meet someone who survived the full season. Okay, be careful, bait out. That night was quiet. The collectors seemed to know I was leaving, or maybe they were saving their energy for the new arrival. Either way, I sat in the center of the cabin with the red lantern one last time, and nothing attacked. The last dawn in the tower was beautiful. Gold light streaming through the windows, forest stretching endlessly in all directions. I'd made it for months, June through September, 123 days, 123 nights. Julie arrived at 3 p.m. in a green Subaru covered in national park stickers. She was 32, bright-eyed, excited about the isolation and the nature. A biologist looking for a quiet summer to work on her dissertation. I saw my former self in her enthusiasm. I handed her the notebook with the rules. She laughed. Is this some kind of hazing thing? I looked at her seriously. Read them, all of them, tonight, I'm not joking. Her smile faded. You're serious. Completely, follow every rule exactly. Don't test them, don't try to be smart, just follow them. What happens if I don't? People disappear, or worse. I showed her the cabin, explained the equipment, gave her practical advice. Then I set up my tent at the base of the tower. You're not leaving. In the morning, I want to make sure you get through your first night okay. She looked scared now, starting to understand this wasn't a joke. I'll be on the radio if you need anything before dawn. After dawn, I'm heading out. The sun set. I watched from my tent as Julie lit the red lantern in the cabin 80 feet above me. 9:52 p.m. I heard it starting, voices calling her name from the forest. I heard her gasp over the radio she'd left on. Julie, I said quietly into my handset. Follow the rules, don't look, don't answer. Oh God, that's my dad's voice. He died 3 years ago, that's his voice exactly. I know it's not him, follow the rules. I talked her through it, reminded her to stay calm, to look for the mistakes, to trust the rules. The voices continued for 43 minutes before stopping. In the morning, Julie came down, pale and shaken. It was real. Oh God, it was all real. Yes, but you survived. You followed the rules. You can do this. How long were you here? 4 months. I don't know if I can last 4 months. I looked at her, saw the fear, the doubt, but also something else. Determination. The same thing I'd found in myself. You can. And when your replacement comes, you'll help them too. That's how it works. We protect each other. We pass on the knowledge. We survive. I got in my truck, looked back at the tower one last time. Julie stood on the platform, small against the sky. I drove away. The road down the mountain felt different. I felt different. The man leaving this forest wasn't the same man who'd arrived in June. I'd been broken and remade, changed fundamentally. I made it back to Denver by evening. Everything looked strange. Too many people, too much noise. The apartment I'd rented felt confining after 4 months of vast horizons. I took the job offer, started rebuilding my life, reconnected with friends, called my mother, began therapy to process the trauma. But I'm not the same. I wake up at 3 a.m. sometimes listening. I keep a red lantern in my apartment just in case, and I check the Forest Service job boards every few weeks. Tower 12 is always hearing, always, the cycle continues. 6 months later, I got an email from Bait. Julie had made it through the full season. September 30th, she'd left the tower and driven back to civilization. She'd lasted. Another survivor, another person changed but unbroken. I wrote back, tell her I'm proud of her, tell her it gets easier, tell her she's stronger than she knows. Sometimes I think about going back, not to Tower 12 but to do what Bait does, coordinate the lookouts, help prepare them, be there for them in ways no one was there for me. Because I understand now, this isn't about fire coverage or bureaucratic necessity. It's about people learning they can face the impossible and survive. It's about finding strength in the darkest places. It's about the chain of survivors passing knowledge to the next generation. The collectors are still there. They've been there for thousands of years. They'll be there for thousands more. We can't destroy them. We can't understand them. We can't even really fight them. But we can survive them. And in surviving, we become something more than we were. I left Wyoming that September morning as a different person. Scarred, changed, but stronger. I'd faced something that shouldn't exist and lived to tell about it. The rules work. They always work. As long as you follow them.